So let's talk.
Let's talk. In victory we win. In victory we win.
Hey guys, it's your girl Latoya Renee and you're tuning into Sisters Can We Talk. Thank you so much for joining us today. This show is an empowerment show that allows us to share each other's testimonies and that for us to be able to build each other's faith up. I know sometimes we can feel like we're the only one going through a situation or a season or a moment in our lives, but I'm here to tell you that there's a person that's been through what you've been through and has made it out on the other side. With that being said, I would like to welcome our guest, Miss Lady Camilla Nesbitt. Yay! Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just honored that you're here. Tell us about your story, your testimony.
Just to go back to the beginning of it, back in the 90s, I was in a relationship, and just to talk about a little bit about the relationship, it was a 4-year relationship, and the first 3 years, no, the first year, that first year where he spent that time of just trying to win my heart.
And woo you.
And woo me, yes, exactly. So it's like he tried to, he was gaining that control and I didn't even recognize it.
How old was you in the 90s?
I was probably, it was like in my 20s, my early 20s. Yeah, my early 20s. It was high school, and then it was a few years after high school. So I was like 18, 19 within that time frame.
Yeah.
And I was, so the first year, like I said, the first year we were thinking, we were all in love. You think you're all in love.
Yeah.
You have somebody that's trying to shower you with gifts and spending that time with you and just really just wooing you.
Right. Was he your first real relationship?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't my first real relationship. He wasn't. But he was that first person that really just tried to buy me a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
So that part was new to me. And so I just really gravitated to that. And because what girl don't like nice things?
Right.
You like nice things.
Right.
So at that point, once he felt like he had that sense of control and he kind of got me away from everybody in the sense of I was no longer with my friends as much because, okay, let's go on a date, let's go here, let's go do this. And, so he drew me away from...
Without you even knowing.
Right, without me even knowing. And so then he started becoming jealous, and then he started becoming controlling. And then he just started just saying things about my appearance and just saying that how I was ugly and just saying things, anything to tear me down.
How did that make you feel at that time?
At that time, I was confused in the sense of I was trying to figure out where all this was coming from.
Right, because previous the whole year, it wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that, exactly. And so I was trying to figure out, what shift, like what happened.
Right.
And then he started cheating on me, and then he started becoming physically abusive and mentally abusive with his words.
Right.
And the thing was, he even wooed my family.
Really?
And so my family was in love with him. Everyone except for my brother. My brother already peeped that. He already knew something
wasn't up.
Right. He knew something was wrong. So, but my brother, he didn't get attached to him at all. My brother didn't care for him at all.
Right.
And I really value my brother's opinion because my brother and I, we were really close.
Yeah.
And so that bothered me, the fact that he didn't like him.
Yeah.
And
even after all, you still wanted your family to like him, even after everything you was going through.
Right, exactly. But that was the first year. Because the first year before all the abuse and stuff started happening, that's when I wanted my family to like him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he's a great guy and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But then when at that point, everybody started liking him, but he became abusive. And so because everyone liked him, I didn't want to tell anybody that he was abusive.
Right.
And so I hid that.
Yeah.
And
you
he
you
hid it
said
as well.
you said you kept the abuse hidden and you didn't expose him.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I knew my family liked him.
So at that time you rather deal with the abuse than exposing him.
Right.
Wow.
And I think a lot of women have dealt with that in the sense of just suffering in silence.
Yeah.
And being in an abusive marriage or
Yeah.
abusive relationship and not saying anything.
You did have another quote. You said, "I was so connected to him that I couldn't leave him."
Yes.
Talk about that.
So the times where, he was abusing me, I considered leaving, but it's like anytime I would leave, he would come back and he would be in tears and be apologetic and saying how sorry he was, and so I would fall for it every time.
Yeah.
And I would keep going back.
Yeah.
And it was like I kept going back because my soul was connected to his.
Yeah.
And so it was like a soul tie there.
Right.
And at that time I didn't realize it, I didn't know why I was going back, I just thought I was foolish.
Yeah.
But in a spiritual side of it, it's a spiritual soul tie.
Yeah, it's a soul tie.
And so that was something that needed to be broken off of my life, which God eventually did.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was so locked and loaded, and I was loyal to dysfunction.
Ooh.
And so I kept going back to that dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah.
Until it got to a point to where it almost cost me my life.
I was trying to say, tell us about that time where it almost cost you your life.
That was when I was in college, and I was in the classroom, and I remember he came to the classroom because he found out that I spoke to my ex-boyfriend. All I did was just say, hey, just say hi.
Right,
that was all, because we were passing each other. But he found out that I spoke to my ex-boyfriend, and he came to the classroom at the college, and he jacked me up, and he drug me all the way from the classroom to the car.
Okay, so you're in class, you getting your study on.
Right.
And he comes in the class and just
snatches me up.
And no one says anything?
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
No one says anything.
Wow.
And it was just, nobody said anything no one tried to stop it.
Yeah.
No one tried to see what was going on.
Right.
No, not the professor, not the class.
Nobody. That is crazy.
Nobody.
Mm.
And it was like, you would think that
somebody
would
or
say
something.
If somebody see a person dragging me on the
Yeah.
ground, okay, say stop, say what's going
What's
on.
going on? Like,
say something.
Yeah.
And I guess they just thought, it's just a relationship, we're getting in that relationship stuff.
Wow.
And I guess now it's more of an awareness because so many people are losing their lives behind domestic relationships.
Yes.
And so I guess at that particular time, it's just, they probably just arguing and they'll get over it.
Wow.
But that wasn't the case. He
Wow.
came to the school with every intention to take my life.
Talk about that.
So when he ended up throwing me in the car, he, and I remember I told you he always bought me these lavish things and all this kind of stuff. So everything that I had on belonged to him.
Right.
Something that he bought.
Yeah.
And so when he got into the car and he was driving, he was like, I'm gonna teach you not to play with me.
Right.
And he was like, that's all I just kept hearing.
While he was driving.
While he was driving. He was really upset, and he was saying, I'm going to teach you not to play with me.
Right.
And so he started punching me as we were driving down the road. And so he was punching me and punching me and punching me, and I was trying to kick back at him.
Right.
And so
what was you thinking at that moment right there?
Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
All I was thinking about was just fight because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
And I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew to fight.
Yeah.
And because when he came and he jacked me up, he didn't have an explanation as to why.
Why? So one day he just came out of nowhere and you was trying to figure out, well, why are you doing all of this?
Exactly, because he wasn't saying the reason why. He just kept saying, I'm going to teach you not to play with me. And then...
Have it ever gotten to that point of violence before?
Not to this extent. I mean, he had quite a few moments of where he was just punch me out of the room, or he would
Yeah.
lock me in the room and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the abuse will happen, or he'll come where I am and try to make me leave and
Right.
go home.
But
and
never
things like
to-
that, but never to this extent.
Right.
And so I wasn't sure what was gonna happen, but I
Right.
knew that if he had me locked in a car and he was this upset and he was
Yeah.
punching at me this much and this hard, I know something's wrong.
Right.
But I just didn't know what.
But you said, I didn't think he would have the heart to kill me.
Yeah. So when because he lived down the street from the campus, and so when we got in front of the house, he was saying that I'm gonna teach you not to play with me. You're not gonna disrespect me. And if he was like, if I can't have you, no one can. And so those little words right there,
ring up like,
it's
okay.
like, okay, now I know you crazy. Like,
For real.
Something's up. Like,
Right.
Something's wrong.
Right.
And that means, it was like, okay, he's about to take my life. And so he pulled out this gun. And so I'm like, because for one, I didn't think that he would kill me.
Yeah.
I thought that love was there.
After or before you saw the gun?
After I saw the gun.
How crazy is that? That you see a gun and my first instinct like I'm gonna die, but you didn't think he would pull the trigger.
I didn't think that he would pull the trigger because he'd never done that,
Yeah.
and I didn't even know he had a gun.
Okay.
And so for him to pull out a gun out of the blue, it's like, okay,
What are you doing?
what are you doing? Like, okay, I know you fight and you hit and you punch and all that kind of stuff, but to have a gun,
Yeah.
like you just taking this thing on a whole nother level.
Right.
And then when he wanted to show me that he was serious about taking my life, and so he opened up the chamber of the gun and he showed me that it was loaded. And so at that point, I'm like, put the gun down.
Yeah.
And so he was just in a rage.
Yeah.
And it was like no calming him down.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying that those same words. He was like, if I can't have you, nobody can. And so when he put the gun, he was pointing the gun to me because we were
By
in
the
the car.
time you guys have stopped
Yeah,
driving.
we stopped driving. We were in the car. We was in front of his house. And I couldn't get out because he had locked the door in a sense, almost like a child lock.
Yeah.
To where I couldn't get out.
Right.
And so at that point, I have nowhere to go. And I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So, and I remember how my sister, she would always try to tell me about Jesus.
Yeah.
And before that moment, I used to tell her, I don't want to hear about that Jesus stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you said that quote, I don't want to hear about that Jesus
Yeah, I
stuff.
don't want to hear about that Jesus stuff. Because I thought she was just, because at that point I wasn't saved.
Right.
And I just wanted to live my best life, so to speak.
Right.
And I was doing everything I was big and bad enough to do.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't thinking about God.
Yeah.
But that moment I needed God. And when he pointed that gun at me, he ended up pulling the trigger. But the bullet didn't come out.
Come on, Jesus.
And so he got so upset when that bullet didn't come out. And at that point, I knew he was serious.
Yeah.
And I remember my whole life flashed before my eyes within moments. Like a second, my whole life flashed. I thought about every time I denied God.
Come on.
I thought about every time my sister tried to tell me about Jesus, and I denied it.
Yeah.
So at that moment, I said, God, don't let me die here. I say, don't let me die here.
Yes.
Because I didn't know what he was going to do with my body. I didn't know if my mom or my family could find me.
Yes. So in that moment, you was thinking of others instead of yourself. So what happened after that?
So at that point, when the bullet didn't come out the first time, he started beating the gun on the dashboard. and he was just in a rage, and it was like he didn't even look like himself. And then he ended up pulling the trigger again.
The second time.
The second time. And so, and then he also ended up putting the gun to my head because the third time.
The third time. So
Because
he did it 3 times.
He did it 3 times to try to take my life.
And 3 times the gun didn't go off.
The bullet didn't come out. And so and looking at it now is like, I didn't understand, at that moment, I didn't understand why the bullets didn't come out the gun. Because he opened up the chamber and I saw it, that the bullets were in there. So it wasn't like it was something he told me.
Yeah.
It was something that I knew.
Yes.
I knew the bullets were in there.
Yes.
And so why they didn't come out, I didn't know.
You know, you said it was the Father,
Yes.
the Son, and the Holy Ghost
that blocked the bullets from me.
Come on, Jesus.
So it's like now I know that God had purpose for me.
Yes.
And that God wanted me to have a voice in the nation.
Yes.
And so to have a voice to be able to help other women.
Yes.
And so when I didn't lose my life then, I knew I had purpose.
Yes.
And I always look at it now, I'm like, he pulled the trigger 3
times.
And it's like I'm staring at the barrel of the gun. And then you put the gun directly to my forehead, and you're going to say, I'm going to blow your brains out because I'm going to teach you not to play with me.
Jesus.
And so, but the bullet didn't come out.
Come on, Jesus.
And so I'm like, that was nothing but the Father, the
Yeah,
Son, and
and
the Holy Ghost that blocked the bullets from me.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm like forever grateful for that. And even just God allowed me to escape from that moment eventually.
Yeah.
And I'm still here.
Come on. Because you can think about all the ladies that didn't get that chance to tell their story.
Right.
And the bullet went off, the gun went off 3 times.
3 times.
What a mighty God we serve.
And there was no safety lock on there.
Oh.
He pulled the entire trigger.
Mm.
And God didn't allow it to come out because there was purpose in it.
Come on. So what happened after that?
So after that, when God allowed, I asked God to give me a chance. And I didn't know how he was going to give me a chance.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to church. And I mean, I knew of church as a child, but I wasn't a part of a ministry.
Right.
And so I was working a job. I was working at Payless. And I was, because at that time I was like working 2 jobs and going to school and all of that. And Payless was my part-time job.
Yeah.
And so I was like in there straightening up some shoes, minding my business. And it was a lady that came in, Sister Holland. God bless her. She's in heaven right now. But she really changed my life. God used her to change my life. And that she was just in there, and she was actually witnessing to somebody else.
And you being nosy.
And I'm being nosy. I wasn't minding my business. I was, minding somebody else's business. But she came in and she was talking to a coworker.
Yeah.
And my coworker, she wasn't trying to hear it.
Right.
She was me. Beforehand, I said, I don't want to hear about that Jesus.
Yeah.
She did not want to hear it.
Yeah.
And so the lady was trying to talk to her and stuff. And so the lady saw that I was being curious.
Yeah.
And that I just kind of kept looking. And she was like, well, you can come to the church too. I was like, well, what church is it?
Right.
And so she told me the church. And then
he came for you that day.
And yes, and God. Yeah, she came for me.
Yeah.
God sent her.
Yeah.
For me.
Came directly for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and when I went to the church, at that point my life was never the same.
Wow. Talk
I
about
never
it.
looked.
Talk about going into that church.
Going to that church, I remember I took my best friend with me because I hadn't been to church, so I was I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
So I took one of my homegirls with me, and I was like, okay, let's go to church.
Yeah.
And she was like, church. And she was so it was like, I was like, this lady. She was telling me about church, and she invited me to church. And then so we end up going.
Right.
And then I sat on like the second row. She was like, why do we have to sit so close? Because I guess she thought we was going to sit in the back. But I was like, no, I
got to get up there.
I felt so alive when I went to the church.
Yeah.
And then when they started singing, it was almost like the heavens opened up.
I understand.
And it was such an amazing experience because it's like I saw life from a different perspective.
Mm.
It's almost like God took the scales off of my eyes, and I'm like telling her, I'm like, can you feel this? And she was like, girl,
Girl,
feel what?
you?
I feel what? You know, she
Right,
was like,
right.
she was looking like something's wrong with me.
Right.
Like, did you smoke something? You know,
Right.
and I'm like, you don't feel this?
Yeah.
And she could not feel it.
Because it was your encounter.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she had no connection to it. And it was like God was calling me at that
Right.
moment, but he wasn't calling her.
Yeah.
But that experience was an amazing experience, and I went to that church up until I got married.
Mm. There was one thing you were saying about when we was talking about your testimony. You were saying that after the incident in the car, you went home and your parents wasn't there, but you had a moment. You had another encounter.
I did.
Yeah, talk about
Yes,
that.
I did. I did have another encounter before that.
Yeah.
Because it was like God was it was giving like confirmations
Yeah.
and sending people
Yeah.
or whatever. And so that was the first encounter.
Yeah.
So when I end up leaving from that moment,
Yeah.
and God allowed me to be free from that moment, I went home, and my parents, they were working.
Yeah.
And I normally clean the house up on the weekends and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And I was cleaning the house, and I had the TV on, and I remember Juanita Bonham was on the television.
Yes.
And I don't even know what she was preaching about, but the anointing from what she was saying,
right.
it just lit up the house.
Mm.
And the anointing of God just dropped in the house. I didn't know that it was the anointing.
Yeah.
At that moment, I just knew whatever it is that's coming from this television,
Yes.
it was so powerful. It had me in tears.
Yes.
I was on the ground.
Yes.
And I gave my life to God.
Yes.
And that was...
You said, I asked God to help me, save me, and he did.
And he did.
And he did.
He did. God
Wow.
saved me. January 26th, he saved me. He
Oh,
saved
Jesus.
me. So I was like, and I didn't know what to do after that encounter.
Right.
And I guess that's when God said,
Send somebody.
to get me
Mhm.
connected to ministry.
Amen.
And when I was connected to ministry, it's like everything after that, my life just began to just unfold in a whole nother way.
So it's like night and day, having God
Yes.
and being able to see, because before you was blinded,
Right.
and now he actually opening your eyes to see the goodness of him and your purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What is after all of that was done, like I said, I have so many quotes. You said, after all of that, I discovered who I was.
Yes. Yes.
So who are you? Who is Miss Lady Camilla Nesbitt?
I discovered from all of that, for one, discovered that I'm stronger than what I thought I was.
Yes.
Because when I was in a relationship, he tried to tear me down mentally and just strip me of my self-esteem.
I was going to say you lost your identity.
Yes, I
Mhm.
did, because I didn't know how to think for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what was beautiful. I didn't know how to be confident in myself. So I started losing my sense of purpose and losing who I was.
You know what I was thinking just now? Sometimes when young ladies get into domestic situations, they lose themselves before they can find themselves.
Right.
And you said you was at, 18, 19? In that age, we're still trying to figure out who we are. And then really, we don't really, by like 30, 35, 36, then we try, like, okay, I'm getting it now.
Right.
So it felt like the enemy was trying to get you before you knew who you were.
Right. Before I tapped into purpose, he tried to destroy me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and that's why I believe that God covered me for that moment, because God knew what my purpose was.
Yes.
And God knew who I was on the inside.
Yes.
And so the enemy just didn't want me to discover that.
Yes.
Because he knew that once I discovered that, there's no turning back.
Right.
Like, now this girl is packed with power, and I can't defeat her.
Right.
That's the other thing. And it was like, so at that point of having that relationship, I had to go through a process of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And healing from not only just the physical abuse, but heal from the mental abuse.
Yeah.
And just really discover who I was.
Right.
And so as I continue to stay plugged into God,
Yes.
you know, God started revealing who I was, and just getting so connected to, just getting more connected to Him.
Mhm.
And I will always, and prayer was always my thing.
Yes.
Is where I would just pray and pray and pray and pray and pray.
Mhm.
And I would tell my mom, I'm like, you know, because I was living with my parents at the time, I was like, Mom, I said, I'm going to go in my room. I said, if you hear me screaming, I said, it's okay. I said, I'm just praying. I'm just
Right.
praying. So it's like I really spent the first 4 years literally in my closet every single day.
I remember you was talking and you mentioned that you have a husband.
Yes.
But before you met your husband, you did like a letter or something?
Yes, I did a letter. I was in my whole process of the 4 years of being in the closet and all that kind of stuff and just praying. Because I wanted to be married.
Yeah.
I wanted to be married like after I got saved. I'm like, God, I need to be married, you know, kind of thing. And
Right.
so, but that wasn't what God wanted
for you.
had for me at that point.
At that moment. Yeah.
At that moment, right.
Mhm.
Because I needed to go through a process.
Yes.
I needed to go through a
Healing process.
because
Yeah.
God wasn't going to hand me to somebody else.
And you're still broken.
Right.
Mhm.
So I wasn't going to take that baggage into my marriage.
Mhm.
So God was able to heal me from that and help me in that particular area before my husband came.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a letter as to everything that I wanted in a husband.
Everything.
Everything.
Every last thing.
Like and from his physical appearance,
Yeah.
from his character, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was so amazing because after we got married, because I had forgot about the letter,
Uh-huh.
but after we got married and we were moving, he was helping me move from my parents' house and we were, moving
Yeah.
together. After we got married, we stumbled across that paper and I began to.
Now, did you ever tell him about the letter prior?
I did.
Uh-huh.
I did tell him that because it was certain things. It was because I was like telling him, well, this is what I told God what I wanted my husband to be.
Right.
And so I didn't go through the extent of, the letter, but I told him that I did write a letter.
Yeah.
And so when we did stumble over the letter, he was like, let me see, kind of thing. So he wanted to see what type of characteristics I put on there.
Right.
And it was just so crazy because I began to cry because he was everything and more
Praise the Lord.
that I put on that list.
Yeah.
And so it was like God was rewarding me from what I went through. It's like God just gave me
Everything.
just a whole blessing.
Yes.
And it's such a blessing to be married to who I'm married to.
Yes.
So I don't have to worry about, being all tense and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so much different.
I want you to speak about, because a lot of ladies I realize that during this show, a lot of people are going through domestic violence and are just looking for help, looking for advice. And some people are just, are shut into themselves and they might not want to get out of the situation, but they still looking for, advice and help. What would you say to someone who's out there right now and is listening and they're going through a moment where they're not sure if they should leave or not?
For me, I would say that they definitely need to tell somebody about the abuse, because that's something that I do regret.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to suffer as long.
Yeah.
If I would have opened up my mouth and I would have said something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would have had a person that may have went through that as well
Right.
to shed some wisdom to say, get out before it's too late.
Yeah.
Because everybody don't have the same, walk away with the same testimony of I made it through.
Right.
Because there's so many women out there that are losing their lives at such a young age
Yes.
because they're in a domestic relationship and no one knows.
Yes.
And then sometimes someone do know, but because that soul tie is there, because they're loyal to that dysfunction and they're so gravitated to that relationship, they keep going back.
Yeah.
Because that was a season where I kept going back.
Yeah.
I kept going back.
Yeah.
The abuse happened, I'll stay away for a little bit, but I kept going back.
Yeah.
And so if they can just get plugged into the God,
Yes, Jesus.
because that was my outlet.
Mhm.
That was my place of healing. That was how I was able to be free from that moment of just being connected to God.
Yeah.
And so telling somebody,
Yes.
talking to someone, don't suffer in silence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I would tell anybody, don't suffer in silence, because you never know when they're gonna go too far.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Do you believe that, because I'm pretty sure there was, bruises and whatever.
Mhm.
Do you think your family knew and just was waiting on you to come to the realization that you wanted to leave, or?
No, the only person who knew was my cousin.
Mm-hmm. And did she?
She didn't speak up because she was going through the same thing.
Wow.
So we were.
You can be able
we
to.
confided in each other.
Wow.
And so that was our only outlet, was each other.
Wow.
But at the same time,
There's so many.
we were both,
Oh my gosh. There are so many ladies going through the same thing, and to have now was you the only one that you can know in your family that was abused?
far as I know, yes.
Because what I'm going with is, there's generational curses and stuff. So I just wanted
Right,
to know,
right.
was your mom ever abused, or so it was just you and your cousin?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. There's so many of us that are suffering in silence. And, guys, if you are listening to this episode and you hear Lady Camilla's testimony, just know that, you don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to, go through this alone. She came out. You have an amazing testimony. She came out on the other side, and you can too,
Right.
And there's so many things out there for us to, websites and hotlines,
Right.
pastor, ladies, that you can go to, and there's no judgment, you know what I'm saying? There's no, they are here to help. They're here to push you through this, right? Right. And so just know that you guys are not alone. I hear so many stories about people who, and even you, Lady Camilla, like, to look at you now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at you now. You could never have told me that was your testimony. And to see how strong you are, in God and in yourself and in your marriage and in your family.
Mm-hmm.
Just to know that, you went through all that. But can I tell you something? That incident was all connected to your purpose.
Right.
It made you who you are.
Right.
God allowed you to go through this to know who you are, how strong you are, so that way you can lead your people.
Exactly.
That way that when He brings people to you, you are able to minister because you went through it.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I started the organization called Her Story.
Yes, talk about that.
And that's an organization that was basically birthed out of a place of passion for me, of just helping women and just wanting to let them know that, hey, your past does not define you. Your past mistakes, your past failures,
Yes.
and your past setbacks, everything that happened to you in your past, it doesn't define your future.
Yes.
So it's a women empowerment organization to help women just turn that pain into purpose. And that's what I did. I turned my pain into purpose.
How
And
can
that's
people
helping me.
find more about your organization? Tell us.
The website is herstoryis.org, and we also are on Facebook, and Her Story Continues. And so, but you can go to the website, and the website has all of our social media platforms.
Awesome. Well, that is our time. Thank you, Lady Camilla, for just gracing us with your presence today.
Yes, thank you for
Your
having me.
like I said, your testimony. Every time I hear a powerful testimony like that, it makes me stand a little bit taller. So once again, just thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, guys, that is it. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. Like I said, if you're out there and you're dealing with domestic violence, there is going to be a number on the screen that would you can just call that number, and they're there to help. I also have a book, The Journey to Freedom. It deals with turmoil and family issues. And you can go ahead and pick up that copy at Amazon.com or go to our Facebook page and just message me and we'll make sure you get a copy. Well, that's it, guys. Until next time, remember to love, pray, and be that beacon of light for the world to see. Bye.
He getting worship in the heavens by the angels. Hallelujah, hallelujah. He feed the birds of the heaven, he'll feed you. When you was broke, he paid your bills when they was overdue. I put my trust in God, y'all be believing too. I put my trust in God, cause he'll see it through. I trust in God cause he delivered me from addiction. I was sick in my sin, his love is my prescription. What kind of man forgive his killers at his crucifixion? So I had to doubt in myself, I guess it's the benediction. My trust in God removed me from the devil's jurisdiction. You say you trust him, but you're stressing, that's a